I am so inspired tonight. I am sitting here among real heroes. And as you know, I meet many, many very important people in my life. I have represented presidents, prime ministers, people of great renown. Tonight is different. Tonight is different. Tonight I am in the presence of genuine heroes. And I would like to ask the rabbis here a question, a she'elah. And that is this: why don't we have a bracha, a blessing for being in the presence of heroes? I think about that, and the closest I can come is Baruch Matir Asurim. Blessed are those who free the imprisoned. But that understates the heroism that we are in the presence of tonight. Tonight it's Baruch, blessed are those who have saved lives. And we know our Talmud teaches us that he who saves even a single human life, it is as if they have saved the whole world. And we understand the reason for that tonight, because every single person who was saved by the Bielski partisans has produced many, many, many others who may in fact save the world. I'm reminded, my wife and I were in Berlin together a couple of years ago, and I was asked to speak to the Berlin Bar Association, group of 1,000 German lawyers. There may have been a half a dozen Jewish lawyers among them. And I asked a single question. I said, how many of you are victims of the Holocaust? And 2 or 3 people raised their hand, and I shook my head. And I said, how many of you have had members of your family die of cancer or heart disease or diabetes or other dreaded illnesses? Every hand in the audience went up. And I said, how can you be confident that the cures for those diseases did not go up in smoke at Auschwitz and Majdanek and Treblinka? And everybody came over to me afterward and said, we are now survivors. And the opposite of that is everyone who was saved has saved so many other people. So I think there are many things that we can learn from the incredible bravery of the Bielski brothers and of all the people who risked their lives in the woods to save the lives of others. We can learn that saving the life of one person is saving the life of so many people. We can learn that failing to act to save the life of one person is the equivalent of taking the life not only of one person, but of so many other people. We can learn that courage is not something that you're necessarily born with. To quote the bard Shakespeare in Twelfth Night, when he talked about greatness, he said, some people are born with greatness, others have greatness thrust upon them, others come to greatness. The same thing is true of courage. If you think about how the world would have been had Winston Churchill been listened to in the 1930s, and had Britain and France engaged in preventive war and destroyed the Nazi war machinery in 1935, 1936, before they became the most powerful military force in Europe. And we have to think of that as we think of Iran today and in the future, how important preventive war can be in saving millions and millions of lives. But if Churchill had been listened to and Chamberlain had been ignored, as he should have been, and how history has relegated him into the dustbin of history, we would never have heard of the Bielski brothers, and they would be here today saying, thank you for never having heard of us. We would much prefer to have lived our lives as obscure people working in our father's mill. They had courage and heroism thrust upon them unwillingly, involuntarily. They rose to the moment. They saw an opportunity. They had no alternative, ein breira, no choice, and they acted knowing that they had no choice. And so I think there are so many lessons that we have. Look, for young people here tonight, for people even my age here tonight, we're so lucky. We haven't had heroism thrust upon us. We've lived in good times. Israelis have had heroism thrust upon them, 67, 73, many other times. I worked closely with Erwin Cutler on Soviet Jewry, and we met real heroes. When we went to the Soviet Union in 1974, 1975, 78, 79, I was there repeatedly. Erwin actually got arrested in Moscow and was threatened with incarceration. But even Erwin was not a hero compared to the Edenudels, the Sharanskys, the Butmans, the Kuznetsovs, the Dimshitzes, the people who confronted the Soviet iron fist and risked their lives, some whose names we don't know because they died in the Gulag. These were people of great courage. Our hope, our prayer, is that none of you will ever have to show the kind of courage that the Bielskis showed. That's the prayer, that's the hope, that's the opposite of the Baruch Matir Asurim. But we don't know that. And there are young people here today who are bar mitzvah age or just a little older than mitzvah age. As Yogi Berra once put it, making predictions is very difficult, especially about the future. And none of us knows what the future holds. And none of us knows whether you will be called on, young people, to show heroism. Even today, young people are called on to show heroism. Let me tell you, you go to university today as an 18-year-old young man or woman, and you strongly support Israel and Israel's right to defend itself, you have to show heroism on that campus. You have to stand up. Not only to your peers, you have to stand up to your bigoted professors who have the power to give you grades. Let me tell you what one of my students did to show heroism. We have a bigoted professor at Harvard Law School named Duncan Kennedy, for whom Israel can do no right and terrorists can do no wrong. And he taught a course. He had no expertise on it. He knew nothing about it. He was a total ignoramus. I'm talking about one of my colleagues now, yes. Total ignoramus, but he was a tenured professor. And so he decided he wanted to teach a course on the Middle East conflict. He didn't know anything about it, but he had strong opinions. He's a member of the hard left. If you're a member of the hard left, you have to have strong opinions, and they have to be anti-Israel, and you have to teach them and propagandize in the classroom. So he taught the class. A student of mine, a young man, decided he would take the class. And so he asked Professor Kennedy to assign readings that were balanced. He gave him a whole curriculum. He said, here's this article you assigned. Let me give you an article that shows a different perspective on it. Among the articles was a chapter from my book, The Case for Israel. And this young man, the teacher said, no, this is my course. I will teach it the way I want. The young man walked up to the professor and said, no, you won't. This is a marketplace of ideas, and what I'm going to do is I'm putting my curriculum on the website, and I am standing up before the class begins. I am urging every student in the class to read my material along with your material. And he did that, and every student read it, and he won. He won in the marketplace of ideas. Students came away from that class believing the case for Israel rather than the case against Israel. That takes courage. I don't know what grade the teacher gave him because grades are secret, but let me tell you, he risked his grades, he risked his career because he knew he was doing the right thing. This is not Bielski courage. This is not partisan courage. We haven't been called on for that, thank God. But this is courage in the face of bigotry in the United States of America today. Imagine if you're a European student confronting the bigotry of Oxford or Cambridge University or the University of Paris or the Sorbonne. There you really have to show courage. When I spoke in Canada recently, I know there are people here from Toronto, you may remember this. I had to have armed people, police on the stage, and they had to give me a bulletproof vest to speak about Israel on a university campus. My life has been repeatedly threatened. I don't have courage. I don't need courage. I can speak. I'm not worried. But today, to speak about Israel and to make the case for Israel on many university campuses, you need to have courage. So that's what we can learn from the Bielskis. These are eternal messages. They are we hear about a man for all seasons. This is a lesson for all seasons. Nobody is immune. Nobody is exempt from needing to learn the lessons of the Bielski brothers and the Partisans.
It's one of the part of what we teach, as you know, is the history and the life lessons of the Partisans. Right. And we have three lessons that we teach the young people. One is that young people can stand up and make a difference, that they can be vehicles of change. Secondly, we must stand up to discrimination, oppression, anti-Semitism, but early. Right. We know we need to stand up on it, but early is important. And thirdly is never give up. Do you think young people today are willing on living out these life lessons and fighting for them?
It's a very, very good question and a very difficult question. I want to add one more element to your list of three, with all due respect, and I learned that as well tonight from watching that film and listening to so many of you who have connections to the Partisans. The other lesson we have to learn is self-reliance. As Elie Wiesel once put it, for him the lesson of the Holocaust is always believe the threats of your enemies more than the promises of your friends. Everybody who lived through the Holocaust, or who didn't live through the Holocaust, understands what that means. Everybody promised help, nobody delivered. That's a lesson that Israel is learning in the world today. It has become self-reliant. It has an air force sufficient to defend itself. It doesn't have to worry like the Syrians have to worry about whether Congress will approve the president's decision to use weapons after red lines were crossed. Israel has its own red lines. Israel has the capacity, the ability, the willingness to enforce those red lines without worrying about whether or not there will be American congressional approval. I remember sitting in the Oval Office with the President of the United States talking about Iran, and I said to him, Mr. President, would you outsource to another country America's defense of its own citizens? He said, of course not. That was the aha moment. Aha? Do you expect Israel to outsource the defense of its own citizens to another country, even one who it loves and respects and admires, the United States of America? Israel must make its own decisions. Israel must rely on itself. The Bielskis built a city, Jerusalem, in the woods because they had to defend and depend on themselves. There was no one else they can depend upon. They couldn't depend upon the Belarusian partisans. We couldn't depend upon the Russian partisans. They couldn't wait for America to come and rescue them. They could depend only on themselves. And that is a tragic lesson that Jews have to learn. Being morally superior is not good enough. We have to have the physical, military capacity always to defend the Jewish people, to defend the Jewish state. How many times a week do we say the following prayer? Hashem oz li'amo yitain, Hashem yavarech et amo b'shalom. God will give the Jewish people oz, strength, and only then will the Jewish people ever get peace. That was another lesson of the Holocaust. Strength, military strength, physical strength of the kind the Bielskis showed must be an aspect of Jewish life. We cannot defend the Jewish people through our books. We cannot defend the Jewish people through our morality alone. We have to use our morality to constrain our physical weapons and our acts, but we always must have the physical capacity and the self-reliance to depend on ourselves. Will our young people rise to that occasion? Yes, they will. And they will especially if they are exposed to this. Every young person seeing this film, every young person seeing Defiance the movie, every young person exposed to your curriculum, every young person who understands what the partisans did will be proud, will be willing to stand up, but they have to know, they have to be educated. That's why you're doing such a phenomenal, important job of educating our next generation of heroes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, what a privilege for me just to be in the presence of such heroism. I have to tell you, I'm going to take this back with me to Harvard. I teach 18-year-old students on Thursday. I teach a course called Where Does Your Morality Come From? I want a clip to show that to my 18-year-old students who come from every background, every religion, every ethnicity. I want to show it to my law students in my classes on morality. This is so important. This has to become a universal lesson for the Jewish community, for everybody who loves democracy, loves freedom, and is insistent on resisting tyranny and resisting genocide and resisting oppression. So I love your motto, resist. I love Tuvia's statement when you compare that to if there were a dinner today honoring people from the Palestinian Authority, from Hamas. Can you imagine any of them identifying with the statement, I'd rather save one Jewish woman than kill 10 Nazis? You know, the Jewish people have always had a biblical motto, Uvacharta b'chayim, choose life, pikuach nefesh, the saving of life. We value life, and nothing tells that story more than the Bielski story and the Partisan story. Keep telling it. Chazak v'yamatz, may you go from strength to strength. Thank you.